Hello, I'm Catherine Clark. I'm interim president at the University of Rio Grande and Rio Grande Community College. And welcome to the Voice of Rio. I'm wearing something a bit different today, and I'm very glad that today we're going to talk about commencement, which is coming up in just a few days. And I'm very glad also to have my guest with me, Dr. Ray Matura, who's going to give us a lot of background information and history about commencement. So stay tuned. Hello again, and I am just so delighted to have with me as my guest, Dr. Ray Matura. Dr. Matura, I think I will call you Ray.
Close. Ray is just fine. I prefer that.
And we've known each other for quite a while, and I'm just very glad that you're joining me today. Dr. Matura has been here at Rio for a good number of years, and I know you don't like to talk about yourself, but just as far as establishing some context, would you share with the viewers a bit about your history at Rio?
Well, I arrived here in January of 1969, so I've been here for a while, about 50 years on campus almost, and moved up through the academic ranks, left a couple of years to wind up completing a doctorate and do some research. Been back. Currently, I'm a professor of sociology and chair of the School of Health and Behavioral Sciences. And I suppose that I'm here today because we're going to talk about commencement, and I have been Grand Marshal for a number of years, but I've been marshaling graduation since about 1973. And for folks out there that know locally, Professor Francis Burdell, he is the one that turned to me as I was a young faculty person, and he was the Grand Marshal. And he said, Matura, I want help. And I said, that's okay, I don't really want to do graduation. He said, I wasn't asking. And I had a great deal of respect for him, for people that knew him. He's just such a kind individual. He got me involved in that, and I've been with it ever since as a faculty marshal and some other positions. And
That's wonderful. Now, what does a Grand Marshal do for commencement? It's not like a Grand Marshal for a parade, is it? It's a different responsibility.
Well, similar in that Grand Marshal for a parade would probably be in a seat at the back of the parade, and the Grand Marshal for graduation leads folks in only so one can be there and check out to see whether everything is done. But there's a lot of preparation ahead of time, anything from, and it's a team effort, and we have a great team here. Won't mention all the names because I'll forget mentioning people like Annette Ward and Tammy Sheets, and my faculty marshals, Donna Martin, and the deans that we have, and Dave Smalley as a marshal. But back in the day, again with Professor Francis Burdell, he did everything from setting up chairs to setting up the stage. But we have a great maintenance folks who do that now, and we just make sure everything's in order, whether we have enough seats, people in order so that their families, as they go across the stage, they can get them in correct order, and coordinating whatever needs to be coordinated down to the flowers, because we have a tradition that we put flowers on the graves of our trustees and faculty members who are buried nearby. And back in the day, when we had smaller classes, people would sing the alma mater at the end, and they would then process up to the cemetery and actually pay homage to the founders, and we would have a prayer. So we continue with that, but it's now mostly the marshals and a few people who want to escort us. Most of the 400 students do not want to make that trek anymore. But so anything that needs to be done, we're there to do it, but it's all about the students and their families on that day. So what we try to do is make it as nice as possible, a little bit of festivity involved, and it's a day to be happy and sad in some ways because people are leaving campus, but we want them to enjoy the day.
Well, and I look to you to give directions, because for those of us who are managing scripts and looking at what's next, and it's just nice to know that you're there to make sure that we're in the right position and that we're moving where we ought to be. Now, last night we had a very special commencement, and we called it Road Trip Commencement. This is the third year, and it was for our athletes who, because of their competing over the weekend, are not able to come to regular commencement. And that was a lot of fun. We had that over at Line Center in the gym, and it was really fun to be able to celebrate commencement for those students and their families. That was great.
It's a pared down ceremony, but again, 3 years ago, and we talked about it in the past, folks who were representing the university athletically, and they're involved in playoff games. Last night we had members of the track team and baseball and softball who were off to their playoffs, and they just missed graduation, and their families were disappointed. So again, it's all about them and having their moment in the sun and in front of their family. So we decided to have a mini graduation for them. And a couple of years ago, it started with a little bit of frivolity. There were a few folks who were in rad tech and others, so we actually had skeletons on stage to represent
I heard about that.
folks who were not there. These are representing those folks who did not show up as part of the stage party. But last night, most of the stage party was there, and folks had their moment in the sun, and they were able to get their pictures going across the stage and hopefully create a nice memory and a good send-off.
Well, speaking of sun, traditionally we've had the commencement ceremonies on the campus green outside. And I know there's a lot of work that takes place to set that up. I've been watching all week. They've been setting up the stage and the back of the stage, and they'll be setting up chairs soon. And we're hopeful that we're going to be able to have it outside.
Yep.
But in case of rain, who are the decision makers about inside or outside in case of rain?
That's you. Well, the Grand Marshal will take blame for anything that goes wrong. We want to try to protect our president. But,
oh my goodness.
But I blame the entire audience. When we go through a little bit of practice with the students, I ask them if they have any religious backgrounds or if they have any spirituality that they need to wind up speaking to their creator, or have whatever it is, a moment of silence to ask for good weather. And if we don't, then it's their fault that they did not follow through. They didn't do their homework. And rain means that we failed on that score.
My.
But in that case, we move inside. And we have a very nice event in Line Center. The downside is only because of seating, everybody can't get their family members in there. But whether we're inside or outside, we have several places on campus where people can go in air-conditioned buildings, the Fine Arts Building, Bob Evans Farms Hall, and they can see the ceremony on big screens. And some people would prefer that, particularly if we have elderly folks or disabled, and maybe they would feel more comfortable, or people with babies and children that they can change the child in a little bit of protection there, as opposed to being outside. And then sometimes people want to pop outside when they know that their graduate is coming up, and celebrate and see them walk across the stage. But so we're going to be hoping for good weather. We usually do. It's been a rarity that we've been outside. I usually ask the graduates, even if it's a late rain, do you want to be outside or inside? And they say we prefer to be outside if it's a light rain. That's what umbrellas are for. And the fact of the matter is that sometimes we have it in the gym, it rains, then it stops, the sun comes out, and all of a sudden it's 90 degrees inside the gym, and it is not the most comfortable place. Plus we're wearing these robes, which add another 10 degrees to the body temperature. So
at least 10 degrees. So we wore our robes because they have special meaning, and I would like for you to tell our audience a bit about what all of this means, because everything on our robes has a special meaning related to commencement and academics and history. This is something that represents centuries of tradition. So could you tell us a bit about what the meaning is?
Sure. The The traditions vary from one place to another, so if we have any cultural historians out there, they may dispute some of the things that I say. But we can trace it as far back as the 11th and 12th century. Some people will go back all the way to the Greeks. Socrates was one who wanted to teach his students to think, and for that they had him commit suicide because that's dangerous. I think knowledge is, we're all in the business of stamping out ignorance and trying to expand knowledge, and knowledge can be very, very powerful. Yes. And it changes the world. It changes families, it changes lives. So about the 11th, 12th century, we started to have folks who were gathering, and most of those were religious. They were in monasteries, because people were trying to support their families and their tribes, and they're working from daylight to dusk, and didn't have a whole lot of time to think and ponder. But so it's some of the monks and cloistered events people had that time. We see some of the commercials with some of the monks about making copies of the Bible with this, and everything was done by hand. So it can be traced back to the 11th, 12th century, but usually the Middle Ages is where it really started. In some of the great universities, I'm talking about Western society now, Paris and Bonn, in Germany, in Italy, in Venice, then later England and Spain, and the Dutch societies. The Dutch at one time were very powerful folks that ruled the seas and a lot of land. And universities started there, and some of this garb is similar to what monks wear, if you would think about that, including some of the hats that we have. This one is from Erasmus that had this, and he was Dutch, and it's multi-sided. And a lot of times some of the other hats are square, and these are referred to as mortar boards. And some people say it looks like a book. I prefer to wind up, I like the idea of a book, but I think it probably came back because the ancients had guilds, and these guilds were tradesmen, and they were the ones who were accomplished, and they wore hats and caps like that. So an educator was also accomplished and probably start wearing that. So I think the book is an added on kind of version of that. Then universities started with trying to designate one school from another, and therefore the color of the robes and also the trim represent various kinds of schools. So the outside of these trims here are the areas that we're educated in. Physicians would probably have an olive drab, science, a biologist or chemistry would have others. Our president here is draped in blue. She's a psychologist at heart. I'm a sociologist, so these are social science colors. And on the inside, the insignia is the schools. Mine is the blue and orange, which is the university, a little bit too many days in the sun, faded. But those are University of Florida colors. Our president here is the Ohio State University, and I think Ohioans know that particular color. So people could identify their schools in that way, and usually the PhDs have 3 chevrons, as the president does, and we're going to have to get the president a 4th one, because once in a while you see a 4th one, and that is signifying a presidency. There's also a medallion signifies the presidency here at the University of Rio Grande. Sometimes people wear other kinds of medallions and awards that they have had. So if you come to graduation on Saturday, our president will wear her academic awards with that. So that's a quick version of what the colors mean. And we have doctorates. People who have a master's degree have a shorter robe, and they also have a hood, but the hood is usually smaller, but again they have school colors. Ohio University nearby would be green and white. If someone has a master's degree from Rio Grande, it would be red and white. And Then the bachelor's degree is also wearing black robes as the master's degree, but it's smaller and shorter. The sleeves are shorter, and so one could look at their garb and indicate who they are. And just like most organizations, the military, you could look at that to see who they are members of and their insignias and where they have served. We have an associate degree, and those folks are usually in a, I want to say whitish, but white, silver, grayish kind of color. So those are the associate degrees. Obviously, if you go down to the high school level, a lot of people who graduate high school know that you also wear caps and gowns, but they're even shorter yet, and they're usually in the school colors.
Right.
But if people do not prefer to wear school colors, everyone can wear black.
Right.
And that becomes a universal color, almost like sports teams anymore. No matter what your color was, people have black shaded uniform. But if you go back 500 years, they could not create colors, so everything was black. But in a modern world, you had a chance of doing colors.
You know, I think there's also special meaning for the hoods, too, because during graduation, we have a hooding ceremony depending on the degree that the graduate is receiving. Can you tell a little bit about, we've talked about the color of the hoods, but on what occasions or for what accomplishments are the hoods presented?
Well, the hoods come in various sizes. Obviously, the doctorate hood is the largest, and it's tradition, although with modern universities, I'm sure when you went to Ohio State and you got your degree, there were so many people there to be hooded, but some schools have a smaller ceremony to hood people, and they may do that the day before graduation. It's tradition on most university campuses that part of getting a doctorate is other people of that level welcome you into the club. And therefore, we defend our dissertation before other people with doctorate degrees, and they're the ones who sign off and accept you. And it's tradition that you have somebody at that level to hood you also. And it could be a personal friend. It could be, for instance, mine was my mentor who I did my dissertation and the reason I went to that university. But it doesn't have to be. My brother and sister have doctorates, and my sister wanted her brother, my eldest brother, to hood her. So he was on stage to, in his regalia, to hood her as one doctor welcoming another.
Yes,
to
I
the
have
field.
a similar story. When I was at Ohio State, I had the opportunity to hood my twin brother when he got his doctorate, and that was thrilling to be able to do that. So there's a lot of personal engagement and a lot lot of connection with
Yeah, so it's a proud moment. It's a way to say
Yeah.
thank you. It's a moment that I feel a little odd, but for me, graduation, there's a lot of teary-eyed when I
Oh,
wind up
gosh,
seeing the
yes.
students and what they had to go through and what they had to accomplish, and you know, family support and people who mentored you, and it is a very, very good memory, more so than most people sitting in the audience actually understand. In fact, we've made changes over the years. We always had people going up the steps that symbolize, and everything is symbolic, symbolize walking up the steps, getting higher. But I remember arguing that we need a ramp, and we included ramps because we had a student who, I think it was after her junior year, she was in Florida and she was hit by a car, and she was wheelchair bound. And she went through a lot of therapy, and she wanted to walk across that stage, and she did. So we carried her up and helped her up until she got into a walker, and it was a proud moment to see somebody. She was 2 years in therapy that she delayed her degree, but you know, that sort of just brings tears to your eyes.
Yes, it
Somebody goes
does.
through that kind of effort, and we said, somebody else may just want to wheel themselves up there, so we need ramps rather, and it's probably a little bit safer anyway, as we know that we've reconstructed our buildings without stairs and making it accessibility. So we wanted to make graduation accessibility to all, and in ours, we try to move people that need any kind of help down front. We will get them on stage. We will carry the wheelchair if they want. We have gone through all kinds of accommodations, and more than happy to do that, just for that 30 seconds or a minute or whatever. They've earned it.
Yes, they have earned it, and you know, it is It's all about what we do, and that's why we're here, is to provide that education for our students and to celebrate that education. And when we think about commencement, you said it's a time of actually endings and goodbyes, but the word commencement actually means beginning.
Beginning, yes.
So we are helping to, I hope we are helping, and can take some I guess, some sense of responsibility for launching these students into their next career or to their next degree program or wherever they're going to go. So there's just a wonderful sense of satisfaction with that. And I just really think that education is, to me, it's the most important thing there can be. And how fortunate we are in our country to be able to choose where we want to go to school, the kind of program we want to be in, which is not possible in some other countries in which they kind of track students in particular areas, and you don't have the opportunity to do that. So we're really very fortunate to be able to pursue what we want to pursue in our education and to be persistent in it.
Yeah, we've been supportive here. We've added a community college to allow
Yes.
people affordability.
Yes.
If anybody has been watching the news the past couple of days, they talk about student debt and how much they have to pay back, and we're trying to reduce those particular costs.
Right.
But this is a country that a lot of people establish scholarships
Right.
and give back to universities, and we hope that those folks who are successful will also think highly of education.
Now we have something here that we haven't talked about. Can you tell us a bit about what this is?
Well, this is our mace, and you cannot see it very well. The carvings in it has Rio Grande in it, and it was carved by one of our students, art students, about 1974, I believe. And each school has one. We lead in with this. Some schools lead in with a lantern, and it symbolizes a lot of symbols, as we just went through with graduation. They may have a lighted candle to bring light and knowledge to the world. Some other folks have different kind of designs, but if you think back to either some of the movies or books that you have read, people who go into battle are led by something such as this. Again, a drum major that you mentioned with a band may have carried something, but it's a sign of leadership and leading the way. And some folks have much more elaborate. They may put diamonds or rubies, etc., in there. And again, different families would have family crests leading into battle, and others it would be flags. So some are decorated with flags. If you have seen some kind of movies with people,
And you'll be carrying that.
Yes,
on
I will carry
Saturday.
this, and then we will put
Wonderful.
this. It always stays on stage, and then we will lead it out with that as a symbol of carrying the group, leading the faculty and administration
Right.
in. So
Well,
it's not only students; it's all of our
And
faculty.
as we think about our commencement coming up, I'd like to just say a word about our speaker. I am just really looking forward to our speaker, who is a retired astronaut, a veteran of 4 space shuttle missions, Dr. Don Thomas, and who's originally from Ohio. But he has agreed to come and speak to our students about perseverance and success, because he applied to NASA for the space program 4 times before he was accepted. And he certainly is a great example of persistence and success. So we're very happy that we're going to be able to meet him and have him speak to our students and families and our faculty and staff on Saturday.
Yeah, the speaker always, we hope, has some word. Most people can't remember who their speaker was years later, but if they can remember the words, I sometimes think that may be the same thing of a class that students take, but they take some things away that shapes their lives in some way. So as they're beginning, again with commencement, some words of wit to how to be successful and how to continue on. So I am sure that he will be very good, and he's a very good example and a role model for our students and for anyone in the audience listening.
And we've been doing a lot of things this week in preparation for commencement. We've had pinnings for our students. That's another part of what we do, that. You mentioned that sometimes there are hooding ceremonies before the actual commencement exercises, and we have pinnings for some of our students that take place before commencement.
Probably the most famous is nursing, who
Nursing,
have their pinnings for a long period of time.
Right,
and
the
but
rad tech
and some other folks too.
Yes, so we're excited to really be doing that. That is a wonderful opportunity. We'll also be recognizing with the robes and the cords that students wear. Some of them are wearing things that illustrate that they're honor students and other things. And so, you know, we're happy to see that and see all the different kinds of things that our students will
And we
wear.
recognize students reading their names at their summa,
Yes.
cum laude, you know, and magna cum laude, you know, with distinction, with honors. Some of them wear cords, as you say, being an honors program. Athletes wear cords. Some are ethnic cords to military, people who have used military benefits and served our country and have come back to school, have a kind of cord and sometimes a cloth to wear to recognize that. So again, as our president will wear her regalia and her honors, you know, she was too embarrassed to wind up bringing other than the medallion here today. But
well, thank you so much for being here, and I am really looking forward to commencement, and I'm looking forward to you guiding us through, and I'll depend on your advice and positioning and helping us through that. And we're going to hope for rain and pray for rain. I mean, not rain, for no rain.
oh my gosh.
Maybe
Everybody
if I
get
do
out
that,
there
I'll do
and do
the
whatever
opposite.
you have to do for good weather. So
Right,
hopefully it'll be a great day.
It'll be
whether
a
we're
great
indoors
day,
or
no
outdoors.
matter. Yes. So thank you.
We're all looking forward to it.
Yes. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you for
Ventura,
having
being
me.
here.
Appreciate it,
Thank you.
President.
Your mics are off.